Welcome to the first Chronicle of Terror episode. Today, we travel to Wichita, Kansas, and tell the tale of a quiet neighbor. Please view this episode with warning and fear. It might save your life one day. I hope this chronicle earns your subscription today. Wichita, Kansas, a city known for its quiet neighborhoods and friendly communities, harbored a dark secret in the early 2000s. This is a tale that intertwines the ordinary with the macabre, revealing the sinister side of suburbia. In the peaceful neighborhood of Park City, nestled in the northern part of Wichita, lived Dennis Rader. To the outside world, Rader was the epitome of an ordinary, law-abiding citizen. He was a devoted husband, a father of two, and an active member of Christ Lutheran Church. His job as a compliance officer for Park City involved enforcing city ordinances, a role he performed with meticulous precision. Unbeknownst to his neighbors, Dennis Rader was living a double life. Between 1974 and 1991, a series of brutal murders plagued Wichita. The perpetrator, known as the BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill, Killer, left a trail of horror in his wake. His victims were found bound, tortured, and ultimately killed in ways that defied comprehension. The BTK Killer taunted the police and media with cryptic letters detailing his heinous acts, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty in the community. Rader's neighbors, like the unsuspecting Cynthia Brown, often saw him working diligently in his yard. Cynthia, a single mother living next door, remembered Rader as a helpful man who once fixed her fence and offered advice on gardening. She never imagined that the man who kindly smiled and waved at her every morning could be the same monster who haunted Wichita's nights. Rader's resurgence brought back memories of his most heinous crimes. In 1974, the Otero family was found murdered in their home. Joseph and Julie Otero, along with their children Josephine and Joseph Jr., were bound and strangled. Josephine, just 11 years old, was found hanging from a pipe in the basement, a grisly tableau that haunted the investigators for years. Rader relished in the details, describing how he had watched Josephine's life slip away. In 1977, Shirley Vian fell victim to Rader's sadistic rituals. Rader broke into her home, tied her up and forced her children into a bathroom before strangling her. The children, terrified and helpless, listened to their mother's final, agonizing moments through the door. Rader's calm recounting of these events during his confession revealed a level of cruelty that stunned even seasoned detectives. In 1985, the tranquil Park City neighborhood was shattered by the brutal murder of Ann Marshall, a 33-year-old single mother living just 3 houses down from Rader. Ann was known for her kindness and dedication to her young son, Timmy. She often hosted neighborhood gatherings, bringing a sense of community to the quiet street. One fateful evening in June, Rader broke into Ann's home through a basement window. He had been watching her for weeks, learning her routine and waiting for the perfect moment. That night, Ann had just put Timmy to bed and was preparing for a quiet evening alone. Rader crept through the house, his heart pounding with anticipation. Ann was startled to find Rader standing in her living room, dressed in dark clothing and wearing gloves. He held a length of rope in one hand and a knife in the other. Before she could scream, Rader lunged at her, knocking her to the ground. He bound her hands and feet with the rope, tightening the knots until she could barely move. Rader dragged Ann to the basement, where he had already prepared a macabre scene. He forced her into a chair and tied her to it, ensuring she couldn't escape. Rader then methodically cut her clothing, leaving her vulnerable and terrified. He took his time, savoring the fear in her eyes. The torture lasted for hours. Raider alternated between strangling Anne until she lost consciousness and reviving her to continue the torment. He inflicted deep cuts with his knife, relishing in her pain and the power he held over her life. Finally, when he grew tired of the game, he tightened a ligature around her neck, watching as the life drained from her eyes. Anne's body was discovered the next morning by a neighbor who noticed her front door ajar. The gruesome scene in the basement sent shockwaves through the community. Timmy, who had slept through the entire ordeal, was found unharmed in his bed. The murder of Anne Marshall became one of the most chilling and unsolved cases in Wichita's history until Raider's eventual capture. In 2004, after a decade of silence, the BTK Killer re-emerged. Raider, feeling the urge to revive his dark legacy, sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle, reigniting the investigation. The police, now more technologically equipped, were determined to catch him. The community, including Raider's unsuspecting neighbors, were once again thrown into a state of fear. Raider's downfall began with his desire for attention. In 2005, he sent a floppy disk to the local television station, Cake. Raider believed the disk was untraceable, but forensic experts were able to extract metadata from it. The metadata led them to Christ Lutheran Church, where Dennis Raider was a prominent member. The church's computers were checked, and soon all clues pointed to Raider. On February 25, 2005, Dennis Raider was arrested while driving near his home. The news of his arrest sent shockwaves through the community. Cynthia Brown recalled the moment she saw police swarming Raider's house. "It was like a nightmare," she said, "to think that the man I waved to every day was capable of such evil." In a chilling confession, Dennis Raider detailed his crimes with a disturbing lack of remorse. His methodical recounting of the murders left even seasoned investigators unsettled. He described how he stalked his victims, gaining pleasure from their terror. He reveled in the power he felt as he bound his victims, often using materials he brought with him or found at the scene. The ordinary man next door was revealed to be a calculating, cold-blooded killer. Raider's confessions unveiled his twisted fantasies. He spoke of his hits, a term he used to describe his victims, and how he would meticulously plan each one. He kept detailed notes and sketches which included diagrams of his victims' homes and lists of potential targets. His ability to compartmentalize his dark side from his everyday life was both terrifying and fascinating to psychologists who later studied him. Raider described in gruesome detail how he bound his victims, often using materials like ropes, belts, or even pantyhose. He relished the moment of control, watching as the light faded from their eyes. He spoke about how he would strangle his victims until they lost consciousness, then revive them only to continue the torment. This process of bringing his victims to the brink of death and back again was a key part of his sadistic ritual. In one particularly haunting confession, Raider described how he used to stalk his victims for weeks, learning their routines and habits. He would break into their homes and wait for the right moment to strike, often hiding in closets or under beds for hours. The thrill of the hunt and the anticipation of the kill were almost as satisfying to him as the act itself. Raider's detailed recollections of his murders were accompanied by an eerie detachment. He spoke of his crimes as if they were mere tasks on a to-do list, devoid of any human empathy. This cold, methodical approach to killing was a key factor that made him so difficult to catch for so many years. Dennis Raider was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The community of Park City struggled to come to terms with the reality that they had lived alongside a serial killer for decades. For Cynthia Brown and others, The sense of betrayal and fear lingered. You never really know someone, Cynthia reflected. Not even your neighbor. Wichita, Kansas, continues to be a city of resilience, but the shadow of the BTK Killer remains. The story of Dennis Rader serves as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind the most familiar faces. The quiet streets of Park City will forever be tinged with the memory of the terror that once walked among them. So ends our first Chronicle of Terror. Thank you for taking the time to view our chilling tale. We hope to have earned your subscription today and look forward to having the opportunity to send a shiver down your spine once again. Please comment if you have a tale you would like to hear, and we will do our best to twist it into a macabre chronicle for your viewing pleasure.